Hey, welcome to Gridiron Gurus for the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel. I'm Travis Lazarczyk alongside Drew Bonifant. Drew, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am good. We are about midway through the high school football season. Our guest this week is MCI head coach Tom Bertrand. Coach, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Coach, you guys are coming off a couple strong shutout wins over Madomic Valley and Mount Desert Island. Kind of talk about the improvement your team has shown you in the first 3 weeks of the season.
Well, again, losing the guys we lost and having to create our identity each year is
Sure.
interesting. And so starting off with Levitt on the road was a true test, and that was a tough one. But being able to come back and get home and get a good one against Madomic, and then go down and battle definitely a playoff caliber team in MDI. We're pretty happy that we rebounded that way, and we've worked out some kinks, and we think we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah. State championships in back-to-back years in two different classes, but like you said, a lot of new faces. Who are some of these new guys who are stepping up for you, or maybe kids who are returning but in new roles?
Yeah. So, Tucker Sharples had a big game last week at tailback. We do that by committee, and he's emerged as a front runner. We've got Andrew Whitaker, who certainly can add some speed back there for us, and is really talented. But some of the receivers that we've got out on the edge just didn't get a chance to do much last year, and Dominic Wilson and Nathan Berthollet and Will Russell, and we've got a lot of guys that we're trying to figure out who's going to handle the load. Kempton Roy stepped in at fullback. We put Seth back up front after the week one loss at Levitt, and realized that we need to shore that up before we worry about putting him in the backfield. So, sure. Kempy's a great fullback, and he's doing a great job for us.
Did it feel different going into this year versus going into 2 years ago before you had this postseason success? Do you feel like that's either changed players' attitudes and everything coming into the season, or does the fact you lost some key players from last year make it feel like you were starting anew and everything like that?
Well, we return a lot of guys. We return our quarterback and our tight end and our offensive line. We knew there were a lot of guys that did return, and that happens every year. But some of our key leaders, obviously Adam and David, and a couple of our linemen, Aaron Skank and PJ Plummer. And, we have a bunch of seniors, Pedro Matos, who stepped up at the end of the year. How to replace those? It's always a challenge for coaches, but we were excited about coming into this season. We knew that we needed to get some work done in the off season, though, in order to compete. We know that each week teams are going to circle that one on their calendar and get a shot at it. So when you're facing the teams like Herman and MDI and Levitt, who want a shot at us, you got to prepare week in and week out. So that's a challenge for us for sure. It's a little different than what we knew 5-6 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah, teams always talk about that target on the back feeling. So I'm not sure if that's always something to consider, and that as a coach you might be have a team that would fit that description if that's something you were feeling, or if it was easy. It's just another year.
No, it is, and we talked about it the other day that we remembered in the LTC when we wanted to. Bucksport had what we wanted, and we knew that in order to get to the level we needed to get to, we needed to beat Bucksport. And we've talked about that. That some of these teams, like Herman, who are up and coming and are in the Comus, and teams that haven't had a lot of success in the past are feeling like it's their time, and they're looking forward to the opportunity to play us. So we make sure the kids are aware of that, and we prepare for that for sure.
Quite a few tough games on your schedule to go. Starting with Herman this week, like you mentioned, they're 3-0, kind of upstart of made the playoffs last year, but have seemed to build on that. Kind of talk about what challenges Herman presents to you guys this week.
I mean, you start with a great quarterback. The Trask kid is tough. He's a great passer, and he'll run the ball. They'll run the option well. He's got some weapons around him, in the backfield and out split out. So they present us some challenges, offensively for them. They're high powered, and they're playing with some confidence. And defensively, they've got a lot of the same kids on that side of the ball. And there's a lot to be said for playing with that kind of confidence. And they're hungry, and they certainly are one of the favorites in the league.
Okay, we'll move on right now to looking at some other stuff around the state. Drew Gardner last week had a tough loss with quarterback Sean Michaud.
Yeah.
Looks like he will not be able to play quarterback the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's an iffy situation where they're still hoping that last I heard when I was talking to Coach Joe White a few days ago that they're still hoping he'll be able to play, that he'll be able to come back and play safety, play defensive back. Wrap up. He hurt his wrist. They think it was at the end of the win over Winslow, but they don't really know. It's this weird situation where he played to the end of that game. They had practice on Saturday. Nothing wrong, and then he showed up to practice on Monday, and he says his wrist hurts. So they're not quite sure how that came to be, but they're wondering if it's going to be something that requires surgery. That casts doubt about whether he'll be able to play again, but it sounds like regardless of whether they do surgery or not, he's pretty much done under center. It's his throwing hand, so gives the starting job to Noah Reed, who looked pretty good, even though it was a tough loss against York. They lost 35-14. He hit Matt Boynton for a 90-plus yard touchdown. So White was saying there were definitely some signs to build on from that.
The week before, Waterville lost a key player in guard linebacker John Evans, who had been a 4-year starter and a kind of a leader on that team. Coach, when you're playing in these lower divisions and depth is a concern, what's the best thing you try to do when you get these kind of injuries mid-season?
Well, we recognized early on this season that we hadn't done a good job. I hadn't done a good job of getting our depth reps in practice, and so I've coached this game long enough to know that something like that can happen at any moment, and it's on us if we don't prepare those kids. So we try to get as many kids reps as we can in practice, and you can either do the shuffle game and move kids around to different spots, or you can plug a kid in, and fortunately, we've got some numbers where we're able to do that. I know that when it's a situation where you've got 20 or 30 kids, that becomes tougher to do. So you just have kids ready to go at any moment, and again, be ready to step up and fill that void. Yeah,
you had sort of a situation like that a couple of years ago when Jonathan Santiago was on your team, running back, got hurt, and someone who was younger, like Pedro Matos at the time, was able to step up, get some carries, and then by the time they're a senior, like last year, Pedro steps up big in the state game for you.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at what you get sophomores that are stepping in and playing varsity football. Our middle linebacker, Isaac Buzzell, was a week one change for us last year when Adam was playing middle linebacker, and we said we need to move him around and put him in some different spots. Mm-hmm. You just have to rep those kids, and you have to trust them, and they build and they grow, and you coach them up, and you hope that the season's long enough that they get to their potential. So kids will rise up if they're given the opportunity.
Yeah, I gotta think that's a tough balance to strike. Just how much of those reps you're giving to the backup players? Because on one hand, you don't want a situation where the starters, you leave some areas uncovered with the starters. But on the other hand, like you said, you want to be prepared for that situation. Is it just? I mean, do you always like to give the reps X amount, or the backups X amount of reps, or does it kind of change depending on the starter's injury history, the abilities of those two players? Or
yeah, I think it's it depends on the situation, but you want your starters to get the majority of the reps. You have to make a conscious decision. Sometimes we'll have rotations depending on what positions we're talking about, but there's a lot of times that we just rotate guys into the different places. We've got personnel packages and different kids that play different spots and different formations. So we're able to get a lot of different kids and a lot of reps. What we lose in that is if we need them to step into a role where they weren't in those personnel groups and play a different role. And we just hope that they understand the concept and have enough of a grasp on what we're trying to do to get it done. But definitely want to get guys familiar before they have to do it on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. Nobody wants to see any sort of injuries, but in the last 2 weeks we've had a couple instances where they've been of the catastrophic variety. In that last week, Wyndham quarterback Harrison Boyle left their game in an ambulance, and then in week 2, Madison lineman Hayden Neto left the Waterville game in an ambulance. Coach, I don't know if you've had a situation like this happen in one of your games, but how hard is it for not only a coach to get their team to focus when they've seen a teammate, go off on a backboard or in an ambulance, and I mean, not just them, but as a coach to kind of focus and finish a game.
Well, you've hit on it. It becomes a management issue, not just for the for the kids, but for you to get refocused. And unfortunately, I've had a couple of those in my time. And for me, I feel the obligation to make sure that I'm getting those kids reset, refocused, reassured them that it's going to be okay. Sort of play the game with a purpose at that point forward, and kind of rally around that as an opportunity to let kids let out all of those emotions that go with that. So that's awful, and it's too bad that those things are happening, and we know that it's part of the game, but it's never anything that you hope for or you look for, and it's hard when it's happening. It's hard to follow up after the fact as well.
Yeah. From what we understand, both those young men are recovering and going to be okay. Now, it's a tough segue, but let's look at some games for this week. Drew, big game in the PTCB, Coney at Lawrence.
Yeah, it's we were talking last week when Coney and Skowhegan were playing that if Skowhegan would win that game, it just throws the PTC right back into this scrambles, jumble of teams, all kind of go. And so now we're at that situation. So this game against Lawrence is now really big. I mean, if Coney were 3-0, you could say, okay, they could afford a down game or something like that. Be 3-1, be fine. If they come out and they're not able to take advantage of this game, it's they're 2-2 and they're it's almost like that great start to the season is kind of wiped out. So it's big to see how they respond to what was definitely a disappointing loss to Skowhegan. They outplayed Skowhegan for the balance of the game, just turnovers, a block punt at the end, plays like that just kind of put Skowhegan over the edge, and Skowhegan took advantage of the chance late.
Right.
But yeah, it's a big situation for Coney to kind of show some mental toughness, shake off a tough loss, and kind of reestablish themselves in that race.
Yeah, and I think Lawrence had that mental toughness check last week, coming off of season opening loss at Mount Blue and then a loss at defending state champ Marshwood. Bulldogs finally got home last week, had the whole team that they expected to have at the beginning of the season. Everyone was healthy and back from suspensions and things like that, and put it to Brewer 46-8. A confidence builder kind of thing. And Coach John Hersom said after that game that he could see that kind of thing sort of bubbling at Marshwood, and it was nice to see that carry over despite the loss at Marshwood. So we'll see, what happens there.
Isn't it interesting how different a 2-2 record can be? Like if Coney goes 2-2, they've lost 2 in a row, and they're like, we need to turn this around here. We need to kind of get things going here. Lawrence wins this game and goes 2-2. It's, hey, we're right back in it. We're feeling pretty good about ourselves right now, I would think.
Yeah.
So,
Coach, regular season, it's not always the best barometer. I mean, you guys were 4-4 after 8 games last year, and then just steamrolled through the playoffs. So.
Yeah, we were in a bad spot there mid-season. We were wondering if we were going to make the playoffs. So, it makes me laugh as Drew talks about that, because it is all about how you package it and where you're coming from in those boosts that you're looking for each week. What are your goals, and are you trying to dig out of a hole, or are you trying to hold on, and you manage through the weeks that way. So certainly I'm sure that both of those coaches are approaching that in different ways.
Yeah. A game in your league, Coach, that I'm going to be taking a look at on Saturday afternoon, and you guys might even be there scouting, is Waterville at Nokomis. Nokomis coming off a loss to your opponent this week, Herman. Waterville, after an opening season win at Belfast, back-to-back losses to Madison and rival Winslow. I'm interested to see how Nokomis bounces back on this one. They had a good bounce-back win after losing to Winslow in week 1 by going down to Oceanside and winning. Now, they lose to a good Herman team. They come back against Waterville.
Yeah, bounce back seemed to be kind
it's
of
a theme.
Yeah, I mean, and another team just trying to get to 2-2 and trying to trying to get some momentum going into the second half of the season, and Waterville looking to not let this snowball into something bigger than just a bad game and a rivalry game, but they definitely would have liked to pull out there against Winslow, but to keep it from turning into something that threatens to kind of take down their season.
Not many weeks off in your league either, Coach.
There's not. There really isn't, and it doesn't matter what the schedule holds. I found out quickly that the move to Class C means that week after, week in and week out, it's just that much more competitive, truly. And it is a good league. That Nokomis Herman game was a physical football game, and it will be interesting to see how Nokomis responds to that. I know they got banged up a little bit, but I know that they're hungry, and they didn't imagine themselves. I don't think they've imagined themselves being in the situation they're in terms of wins and losses. So I bet they're going to be hungry coming out of that. And of course, Waterville needing to really turn things around and rally around the misfortunes they've had. It's going to be quite a game.
Okay. A couple games in Class D South we're looking at, Drew. We'll start with Poland at Winthrop Monmouth. Winthrop Monmouth kind of gave Wells a good challenge last week.
They did. They struck first, took a lead in the first quarter, and they had a chance for a touchdown pass to make it a one-score game in the fourth quarter. Just missed the connection there. Wells ended up taking it down and putting the game away. But this is a sneaky, intriguing game this week against Poland, because last year this matchup was, Poland was down and out in the standings, and Winthrop Monmouth was looking at this as a game to kind of, beat up on a lesser team and kind of get something going. Now it's looking like, this is a tough opponent too. Poland has beaten two teams, Freeport and Old Orchard Beach. Granted, those are Class E teams,
Right.
But they beat them by over 20 points. They've had a pair of convincing wins, so they're looking like a much more imposing matchup. And so this isn't so much from like last year for Winthrop Monmouth to just get a nice little cushy win there to get things going.
Sure.
This is a chance to kind of prove, like last week, that they can go against some tough competition. So this is a pretty big game for them.
Okay. Another game in this league we're looking at Lisbon at Madison. Lisbon 3-0 after a really interesting win against Spruce Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And then Madison struggles in week one against Wells, but then dominant against Waterville, a Class C team. Beats another Class C team last week in Belfast. Bulldogs are done their non-conference schedule, so now they have nothing but Campbell Conference Class D. And this tough one against Lisbon this week should kind of give them a good barometer of where they stand.
Yeah, it feels like Madison is back to being the Madison that we've seen, the Madison that we expected coming in. Lisbon's a very tough opponent. Lucas Francis is one of the best players in the conference in the class.
If not the state, yeah.
Yeah, so this is not going to
He's still playing?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, it's
Well, it's like your son Adam. It's like they just when you start as a freshman, it seems like you're there forever.
Yeah, they had that guy Noah Francis 2 years ago who was the big running back that was running over people, and then all of a sudden, it's just another Francis over and over. It seems like, but he's one of the better players in the state, like we're saying, and Madison has the work cut out for him, but Madison's playing pretty well.
Yeah. A game you'll be at in Class C South, Drew, is Lake Region at Gardner. Gardner coming off that tough loss at York.
Mm-hmm. And it's a chance to see how the offense responds with Noah Reed having gotten a full week of practice as the guy under center. He got the start last week. It wasn't like he came in off the bench, but it was still kind of a impromptu feel to it. This time he knows he's the guy. The team knows he's the guy, so you go forward with that. And it's a tough conference there, and with Levitt playing the way they are, and Cape Elizabeth being what they always are, so big opportunity to beat a team that they should beat. Lake Region is at the bottom of the standings, but with that quarterback injury, there's a little bit of an unknown. So it's a chance to see just how Gardner is able to shake that off and find the strat they had at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and a game in crossover in Class B, rematch of last year's state championship game. We got Marshwood coming to Skowhegan. Drew, you saw Skowhegan last week. I saw them against Brunswick in week 2. They don't have the firepower that they had last year when they struggled to score against this Marshwood team, but they do have a better defense, it looks like.
They do. And part of I'm not sure how much of last week's game plan was they were showing, because they threw a lot of lateral stuff, screens and everything, and shorter passes. I'm not sure how much of that is we don't have the weapons we did last year, so we really simplify, we really boil this down, and how much of that was just they didn't want to do a lot of long dropbacks with Coney's pass rush.
Right.
It looks like they're not the team that's going to go out there and score 50 points on you like they were last year, but they can score enough, and that defense was making big plays left and right against Coney. That looked like last year at times they looked like there was just no resistance. Teams would just go down the field on them. This time it looks like it's different. They play tighter coverage. They rush the passer. They get heat on the quarterback. So it looks like they have even if their offense is maybe, like you said, lost a little of that firepower, that defense has taken a step up.
Yeah, the problem is this week they're playing a really good Marshwood team that's undefeated.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like they've shown any signs of slowing down. Whether Skowhegan can slow them down a little or not, we'll see.
Yeah, and it's a test to see how, it's like they get that redo test against B South after the first game against Kennebunk. They've now had some wins to get their ship kind of straightened out. So now they get another test. Let's see how it goes.
Should be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's going to do it for us this week on Gridiron Gurus. Thanks for watching or listening. For Drew, I'm Travis. Coach, thanks for being here.
Thanks again.
We'll see you next time.